ready there. Call to order the September 26th meeting of the Communication and Policy Committee. Members who are here are Dave Parker and myself, Gina Cannon. We do not yet have a quorum, although we are expected to have another member join us, which will allow us to have a quorum. But in the interim and in the interest of being smart and utilizing the time that we have, one of the issues on our agenda are policy appendices. We have approved a lot of policies over the last year and a half, 2 years, that have, will attach appendices, either forms, procedures, protocols, whatever. And I had asked the administration to please give an update on how we were doing on all of those various appendices. So, that having been said, Superintendent Murphy, do you want me to toss the ball to you, or do you want me to toss the ball to the ever-capable Karen Fisher-Anderson?
You can do that, Madam Chair.
So what I did is I went down and made a list of the policies that we worked on, particularly last year.
All, what, 42 of them or something like that?
There were quite a few of them. And it was good for me to go back and do this exercise because it had been a while, and it was good to be able to compare what's on the website and where we are. So, for example, I'm only going to hit the ones that either have not even an appendix, but an additional document or something attached to them. I'll walk you through if you have any questions. So the first one, and these are not in numerical order. I apologize. I took them in order of how they showed up in my notebook. So the first one was the Advanced Coursework, Advanced Placement, and Dual and Concurrent Enrollment Program, if you recall.
Yep, policy.
Number, please.
635.
Thank you.
Yep. I took a look at that, and it is mentioned in our program of studies at the high school, specifically page 84. And it also is driven by MOUs with the Community College System of New Hampshire. So we do not have an appendices, but we do have those additional authorities that we go to. Okay. The next one is home education instruction and access to curricular and co-curricular programs.
Number?
620. And we do have an appendix to that, and it is, again, 620. And I have a copy of it, and the only thing we changed on the appendix is New Hampshire School Board Association had 6 through 12 with regard to students in those grades. Oh, wait a minute. I apologize. I'm ahead. I'm thinking of health education plan exemption from instruction. My bad. So the only, no, that is right. That is right. I apologize. I was right the first time. So 620, there is an appendices, and it's called Appendix to Policy 620, Participation in Public School Activities by Home Educated Charter and Non-Public Students. So that is in there.
And as I recall, that was supposed to be some kind of procedure for how homeschooled students would show that they are on some kind of competency level such that they're eligible for extracurricular activities.
Well, that's more in the, not specifically in this one. The one we're talking about right now, we do have one that talks about eligibility, and that deals with like grade point average, discipline, and stuff like this. The thing in our appendix is basically, let's see, the criteria and conditions for establishing being able to take part. For example, it's developmentally and academically appropriate for the student. All prior prerequisites are met, and then it goes on, and it just lays out the conditions and criteria for people to be able to apply. And the most important thing that came out of 620 in last year, even when they went back and played with it, was that we cannot make participation by home educated, charter, and non-public students more restrictive than they are for students enrolled in the district.
Okay, but as I specifically recall that policy, the issue was how we were going to verify that that homeschool kids were eligible to participate in sports based on like GPA, similar to kids that were at regular enrollment at Concord High School. Do you remember that?
I absolutely remember that. We had that discussion, and in that policy that Karen's reading, it says that the student will meet the same expectations. Doesn't define it, just says expectations as our students. The problem we have is there is no grade point average from a homeschooler. What you could ask the parent to provide is their assessment or an outside assessor who evaluates the student, but that doesn't give you a grade point average.
No, but I think that's what the concern was,
Well,
is how do
I don't
we-
think you'll get one. I think that.
I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No, I know,
think
I know.
that
I'm
was
just saying, I don't think we're gonna get one. I don't think, some may operate like that, but most don't.
They don't, and they
No,
don't
I
want
don't-
you,
I didn't
And
when I
that's,
was.
to them, that's interference.
that's right, I was gonna say. that would
So
be-
I hear what you want, and so all we're saying is that they meet the same expectations, which is to pass 3 out of 4 classes, and I forget what all the definition, and that their behavior is above board, but other than, and they're in attendance, I don't know as you're gonna get the detail like we have in our high school
Right.
about students' GPA and.
Well, with regard to athletics, they have to have a recent physical examination.
That's required.
So there's consistency there. But the other co-extracurricular activities they're allowed to take part in are field trips, excursions, band, chorus, clubs, organizations, school dances, use of the library.
Yeah, no, there's no,
So, no, I didn't
Well,
see
I
anything
just
in
think
here.
the point is that we have this expectation for our students at Concord High School or at Runlet Middle School to achieve a certain level in order to participate. And we don't have that same data from homeschoolers to be able to compare apples to apples. So you have to really, remember, our homeschoolers are taxpayers in this community, and I think you have to say to the parent, you have to have a conversation with them about the student's work. But
Currently, how do students participate? What is the avenue? Who do they meet with? If a homeschooler wants to be in band, for example.
they just come into school, they meet with the principal, who will
Okay.
get them
Okay.
with maybe Gabe Cohen, the director for the music program,
Okay.
and they'll come up with a schedule, because sometimes.
So what we're asking is when they come in for that, to apply, to join the band, that that we want to establish a criteria that says they're a student in good standing, for lack of a better term. And what criteria would that be? Is that what I'm?
yeah, I think that
Is that what we're
was the
talking about?
question, yeah.
And if it's, I don't know how onerous or how many students we have, but I would think that you would want some degree of transparency or accuracy about their performance, but you also want to give your principals some leeway, don't you think?
Right, well,
Or
first-
or whoever is making that decision.
Yeah.
How do they, and most kids are not refused, I'm sure.
Right. Dave, first of all, we don't have a lot of students who
That's what I
are
was gonna
doing this,
say.
so I want to be
Right.
clear about that. We've had occasionally a few students, so
Right.
this isn't a major issue.
Right. That's the other.
I think that what ought to happen is a conversation between the principal and the person providing the homeschooling,
Right.
which would be the family,
Right.
and have that conversation about their work and their behavior and their support of the homeschooling but I don't. We can't. We don't ask for anything else for homeschoolers.
Can we put that into text?
That they
Or-
meet with the principal and determine the
Or designee?
or designate.
And is it possible to do that in whatever appendix we have, so we don't have to go back and
Right.
change the actual policy all over?
Yeah, certainly, we can
You
do
know
that.
you know what I mean? So we don't have to go back and
Right.
redraft and.
And by the way, I agree, because we can't be setting a higher standard for our own kids than we do the people that
Right.
that are homeschooling, or vice versa, so.
Right, no, it's
So,
gotta
but
be equal.
yeah. But I think you also want the leeway. If you know, if I were a principal, I would have someone that knew a fair amount knew some things about homeschooling and would know the right questions to ask and the criteria to look at. But I don't think we have to define that down to the test or the, right?
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying that.
I didn't hear you
think that-
saying that, but
yeah.
I'm saying that we don't want to.
No,
We
but
want to
I,
give them some latitude.
I think the concern was that there was some kind of structure so that both homeschoolers know what we're looking for, and so that there's not disparate treatment.
That's right. That's
That
right.
benefits either side.
Correct.
We sometimes have a youngster from a private school, right,
Right.
that doesn't have that sport. You're allowed to do that.
Right.
So those students, it's easier because they often have the same
Right.
kind of grading and all
Yeah,
that
we've
that
done.
we
we've
have. So
certainly done that.
if I get this right, meet with the principal or designee to determine standing as it relates to the criteria for eligibility.
Right,
Correct.
basically.
Is
Yes.
that
That's
what you're
good.
saying? Okay.
Good job.
Okay.
Okay. for
Did you get that?
eligibility. I
Well,
did.
Karen, I've got it, so we can.
I didn't,
Compare
I'm
notes.
sorry.
I
I've
got it.
I
Determine
have a hard time
standing.
keeping notes when I'm
Me
still
too.
sharing the meeting. I'm
Right.
sure.
I got it. Determine standing for criteria for eligibility.
Yep.
So, and we can compare notes. Okay. All right. So the next one was number 621, extended learning opportunities. There is a application for that, but it's our application. The New Hampshire School Board does have an appendix that they can offer up, but ours is based on what we do at Concord High School specifically. It is at the ELO office. It's on our website. You know, when we talk about ELO, it's on our website. So I wanted to get your direction on whether you want to go with the New Hampshire School Board, or if you want to use, as we normally do, the tailored one within the high school for the application to take part in the extended learning program. And if we do that, I would not make an appendices to anything to the instruction, because we have the ELO office and the website where they'll work with the kids and go from there. I don't think it requires an appendix.
Yeah. Well, my whole concern was that we had a lot of policies that said, you know, we'll add an appendix about this. I'm not a driving force requesting appendices. So, you know, if we have a procedure and a protocol that's already in place, I think we're just trying to make sure that we're following up in all the places where we said we would have addenda. I think we would simply want to, at the end of the policy, perhaps leave a link to the application or a link to the ELO office, so that, I mean, I know that our policy manual is not the most captivating fireside reading for people on their vacation, but if somebody's going to look for it, it might be helpful to have a link to be able to, oh, ELO, this is what I was looking for. Click, it takes you right there. You can see what you need. Does that make sense to you, Dave?
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that in particular. I was thinking more about what avenue do we take, the school board one or the high school one, and it makes sense to me to use the high school one because we have all the infrastructure in place, the supervision. If they're going to get it through us, then do it through us, and yeah.
Okay.
That's
Makes
why
sense.
create another.
Let's have another policy meeting.
Well, no, not even policy, but a different avenue.
Yeah,
But
no,
then
I
we
just-
can't. Then we may not be supervising, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of our
Yeah.
strengths. It is the yellow program at Concord High. So I think that works for me.
The next one is 634, and that's health education plan and exemption from instruction, and that definitely does have an appendix to it. That's the opt-out form, and we recently dealt with this. That policy's up for its second reading in the October school board, and that's why the appendices isn't with it yet, but
Okay.
it will be. And that's the appendices where one thing we changed from the New Hampshire School Board Association is the grades. Their form says 6 through 12 for sex ed. We actually have it in 5th grade as well, so we've modified it to cover our specific circumstances.
What number again?
634,
Thank you.
yeah. Now, 650 is parental objection to specific course material. Right now, the form that we ask the parents to fill out is the same one that is in policy number 651, which is citizens' request or objection to specific course material. So, excuse me, it would be citizens' objection, which is 651. We haven't taken that up yet, and I'd sort of like to reserve that for coming attractions, but the same form would be used in 650. And that's what the parents need to fill out, parent or guardian, as to their objection and what the material is.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
All right. 650. The next one I have is 676, which is alternative learning plans.
One more time.
676.
76.
Okay, alternative learning plans. As we read about them, as I read about them in the policy again, this is a plan that's developed between the principal, the family, the student, and so we don't have an appendix to that policy. It's just a specific plan for that particular child. Okay, and New Hampshire School Board Association did not have one as a go-by. 671 is high school graduation requirements. There's wording in there, as you all know, that talks about now the new requirement that graduating seniors fill out a FAFSA application, or that they seek a waiver from the New Hampshire Department of Education. I just wanted to get your guidance. I do not recommend that we put those in as appendices, because if those forms change, we need to be current with them. But those would be the only two that would be pertinent would be the FAFSA application if we wanted to append it, and then second of all, the waiver if the student desires not to apply. And that comes from DOE.
Can the student ask for a waiver, or do the parents need to?
Depends on the age.
Right.
So graduating seniors.
If they're 18, they can do it.
Yeah. But one or the other they're supposed to do, and it's laid out in the policy, but we don't own the forms.
Right.
Okay.
That's fine.
So that's 671.
I'm thinking as an administrator and going, good luck.
Yeah.
That's a tough.
671.3 is early graduation. There is an application that is filled out with the guidance counselor. It's also referred to in the program of studies. So we can append it if you want to, or we can just leave it as, there is not one there currently.
Right.
Okay.
Do we have a link somewhere?
We do in the program of studies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can we link to the program of studies? I know that changes, so that might be problematic. I'm just trying to make it more user-friendly for people to find what they need, but it may end up being less user-friendly if you get 404s that this link is a dead link, so.
And it does say in the instruction, and it was consistent in the program of studies that they go to their counselors and request the form.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last one is, we'll be talking about it tonight, number 529, which is education of homeless children and unaccompanied youth. When we get to the appeal section, there are 3 forms that I am going to recommend that we append, one because we're required to, but the other 2. And that is a copy of the paper, the form that they need to fill out to file an appeal. They don't absolutely have to fill out the paperwork if they can't, but it shows exactly what information is required. And then there's a form that we fill out, either the homeless liaison or the superintendent, as to the decision on enrollment or transportation or whatever the issue is. And then there's the process, the New Hampshire state process for filing an appeal. And all of those, all 3 of those, I believe I'm recommending to you all, you think about appending them so they're right there. All the information is right there in
Okay.
one place.
So for example, referring back to the policies that we're looking at tonight, so the 539 also refers to a form, a bullying form that gets filled out.
We're
Do we
going
wanna-
to do 539 in our next meeting here. You're going to get it as a read ahead tonight.
Okay.
And then there'll be three potential. There's going to be the report form, the flow chart, and Safe Schools Memorandum of Understanding.
Okay.
So for next week.
Yeah, no, it's just as I'm reading through it, they're talking about forms, and I'm like, okay, we're
No.
getting back into,
No, you're absolutely right.
Back
So
into the same
I didn't know if
shoot.
you want to see these. I'll just I didn't make y'all copies. But for example, here's the written notification of the decision, and this is for the school to fill out as to after they look at the appeal. Okay, and it tells the appellant where to go next. And then this is the written notification that the parent, guardian, and/or unaccompanied youth, if they're over 18, would fill out. And then here's the process from the state. So-
You can keep them.
it's okay.
So those would
Yeah,
be
they
the
look
three.
pretty performed.
It just keeps it all in one
Right.
place.
Yep,
And that is it, other than the bullying, which we'll take up next time.
right. Okay, so, go ahead, Kathleen.
So could we go to another place that doesn't require any vote or anything tonight as your next
Sure.
topic? I would say just we've been working on the bully policy, which is 539, student safety and violence prevention. It was not our intent to walk through that 16-page policy, but to ask you to read it and write notes, review it, so that next time we meet, we'd probably only have that policy in our next committee, because you need to walk through it so you understand all the process, the rights of students and the victim and the perpetrator. So there's all very much detailed, as along with, consequences and all that. So I really didn't, we just wanted it, we put it on the agenda for tonight, just really for a read only.
And the changes are in yellow, yes?
Yes.
I mean, because we walked through all of the
Right.
major revision and upgrade to this last year.
we were
so-
going to. I don't believe we ever did.
Well, we definitely walked through it all, in the whole timeframes and the rights of the accused as well as the rights of I'm not saying we voted it, but we walked through all of this extensively.
Very early on.
Yeah,
And then there were changes being made. So
Right.
then we went back and wanted to work with the students.
Right. I was just going to
So
say,
you did it in stages, and then, of course,
Right.
we were interrupted.
we did
Many
student
times.
forums, like 6 of them, and I've got their feedback. And so we added that. I added a lot of that into the new policy. I also made sure we were up to speed with RSA 193.4, which is very specific,
Right.
including a private cause of action. I didn't put that in the policy, but that's the new legislation that came out, I believe it was last year, that says there's now a private action. And then also, I pulled a couple. I pulled Oyster River, and then I pulled Hampton, because our illustrious superintendent was part of the bullying, task force early on, and they had some good additional stuff. We were very close. So anyway, I made a lot of little changes I wanted y'all to be aware of.
Okay.
A lot more definitions, which was really what the kids wanted. Cyberbullying, things like give some examples of what that is. So I spent a fair amount of time on it. So I'd love for you, if you get a chance to read through it, and so we can talk about it next time.
okay. So.
And once we do that, once we finish that and the process and you all go through it, then that'll be our responsibility to make sure that we work with our administrators, our teachers, and students so that they all understand any of the changes that were made.
Yeah, I do a lot of mandatory training on bullying every year, and then as requested, keeping up with what's the law, and that includes, of course, bullying can be for many, many different reasons, so it often bleeds over into our transgender. It can be our non-discrimination, so it can be Title VI. There's all kinds of implications. So
Yeah.
But anyway, we do train to it very every year. So
Okay.
So I think if That's good for you, Gina. I think we'll have that on the next month's agenda. And we
Yeah,
decided to do that all by itself, right? We didn't have anything else that you and I talked about. I didn't bring my
The
folder down.
RSA, the recent fall legislative updates, we just wanted to give you a quick breeze by on where we are on those. Good news, we're where we should be. But I hate to kill the excitement level, but just want you to know, we'll just point them out and tell you exactly where we are on them.
Okay.
Okay?
Since I don't think we're expecting to vote on moving the potential resolution forward.
Right.
Certainly not tonight. Do we want to turn our attention to that while we wait for Jim? I don't really want to get into McKinney-Vento, the homeless children and unaccompanied youth, which, if I understand correctly, is required for us to basically put into place ASAP.
Correct.
But since we have to vote on that, I don't really want to have a discussion without Jim being here.
I agree.
So, Dave, are you okay with us just looking at the resolution for
Oh, yeah, I'm fine.
campaign contributions
Yep.
and stuff? So, as you know, I'm not telling anybody at this table anything new, but for people who might be watching at home, one of the areas of deep and abiding concern for the Charter Commission had to do with transparency in campaign financing. And with all of the changes that have been happening around school boards around the country, this was an issue that was near and dear to the Charter Commission's heart. They wanted to put that in the changes to the Charter Commission, and the Attorney General's office said that that was not a permissible change to the charter. So it then fell to the Policy Committee to look at whether or not we wanted to establish a resolution, which is different than a policy. A resolution, and Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong, but a resolution would be binding on the board, not administration and school procedure.
That's correct. You did talk about whether this resolution would be binding or whether it would be a volunteer.
Right. And my understanding, again, from reading the Attorney General's letter, would be that this is a voluntary resolution. And so that is the best, considering the parameters that have been laid out for us by the Attorney General's office, the best that we can do is a voluntary resolution that would only affect board members.
Right.
So we cannot issue a resolution that has authority over non-board members. So that having been said, go ahead, Dave.
Well, if you're running for school board, you're not a board member yet.
Correct.
So you, and even if you are, if I decide to run and not do it, I don't have to.
That is correct.
And what was the rationale? Did we have any for why we need to make it voluntary?
Well, because my understanding was that the Attorney General's office basically laid out that we could not make it a binding resolution on either the current board members or anybody running. The best that we could do would be a voluntary resolution.
For now, what about for the future?
If I understood the Attorney General's letter to the Commission correctly, the only way it could actually be a requirement would be if the legislature so enacted legislation.
Okay, that's right. I do recall that. But the city councilors are also under a voluntary resolution? Or
No, I think they are under a legislated
Right.
binding.
Okay.
They are.
It is not voluntary for them. So, so one of the things that I looked at was what were reporting requirements for other offices that had binding requirements, and then I believe Karen, you went out and kind of did the same thing, yes?
Looked at the City of Concord ordinance, that Kathleen actually had it, so I
thank
took a
you,
look
Kathleen.
at that. And
Try to give credit where credit is due.
Yep, and that's where I came up with the definition section and some of the other things. And instead of making it a ordinance, made it a resolution.
Right.
And then followed through. And if this is what you decide to go with, I've asked Bridget to come up with the itemized form as well,
Right.
so that people can fill out to whom or from whom the whether it was an individual or business or committee, the money came from, address, date, amount of expense, total amount. The only thing I would add to the discussion, you've hit on the fact that it is not, it can't be binding, so therefore it's voluntary, is that there was also the provision in here where we made it, I put in something to the effect that, boy, my mind, I apologize, that every sitting board member, it's not applied retroactively, it's going forward.
Right.
Right.
So-
But then, as I was reading this, I had a question about the identifying the name of the candidate who paid for the advertisement or communication. So, if it says Jones for school board, I know way back when I was the treasurer for somebody's run on the school board, and we had to have on the sign
Right.
at that time,
Right.
paid for by
Right.
so-and-so treasurer.
Right.
Is that what you're saying has to happen now? And what about people, I hate to say it, I'm gonna be self-interested here. Like, I have signs from the last election that don't say that because that wasn't required back then.
Well, that's why it's
Does-
not retroactive.
Does that mean I can't, but does that mean I can't use those
Gotcha,
signs?
gotcha.
If
Well-
we enacted this?
This time around?
Yeah,
This is only reporting.
Yeah, this
the
is reporting
form
the
to
expenses.
To,
Well, but
to
if-
the high.
I understand because I ran for both. But if it's not binding and it's voluntary, I'm not sure would be required to put it on
well,
signage.
I'm just wondering, I mean,
Yeah.
I personally, I don't have any problem saying where all my non-existent campaign finance donations came from. But I want to comply with
Right.
what we're writing. And so the question would be, do all of those signs now they become not usable because they don't say, paid for by Gina Cannon out of her pocket?
There was a section in here, I don't believe I put it in, because I was not sure if it was,
Fiscal agent.
shall
Yeah,
identify,
you
no,
Fiscal
it's in
agent,
there,
that's it,
it's under
yeah.
B. I believe it's under B where it says, all political advertising or communication shall identify the name of the candidate who pays for the advertisement or communication or where or whose advertisement or communication is paid for by a political committee. It's under
Yeah,
B.
political
4B.
communications.
4B.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or who's is paid for by. So I think that in the scenario you gave us, you just posed, I think if it is a sign that goes up that is paid for by somebody other than yourself, that's supposed to say paid for by.
Okay.
There is an
I'm just-
exception.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I'm trying to
That's a
figure out
great
how to be
example
compliant
because
with that.
lots of
Right.
times you'll get a group who
Right.
wants to support you. You didn't have anything to do with them, but they want to put out signs in supporting you.
Right.
So that they have to identify themselves, but your sign doesn't have to identify. You don't have to put fiscal agent. That's not on the signs
I'm
anymore.
just trying to figure out how,
Yeah, I
how
know,
we
I
comply
know.
with before we're putting into effect, how do we
Right,
comply with it?
Right.
Well, I think the fact that it is voluntary gives us more leeway with that, you know? And if you choose to, then do you comply with that signage, fiscal
Like
agent
that
stuff?
T-shirt.
Yeah, I don't have
And
strong
then,
opinions
did
either
you
way.
see the part in there about, okay, so if we can't have a compliance part that says you're disqualified from running if you
Oh,
don't comply.
and I think there's a typo in there too.
Oh,
So,
okay.
if you-
Then the best we could do was under 3.6B, where I talk about and that should probably, A, B, yeah, where you have to, the best we can do is have the the clerk, the school board clerk, just let people know if they should ask that the person chose not to do the disclosure.
Right.
So, but as Dave points out, it could be I'm not going to do the disclosure in whole, or I'm not going to do it in part. So.
Okay, yeah, no, I also think you may have a typo there. If you look at 6C,
Okay.
where you have compliance with filing the report shall not be a disqualification. I don't think that's quite what you meant.
Where are we? I'm sorry.
So, sorry.
3C.
3C.
6C, sorry. Compliance with filing the report shall not be a disqualification.
Right. In other words, if you don't do it,
But wouldn't that be lack of compliance?
compliance shall not be, non-compliance.
There you-
Non-compliance. No, you're right.
There was something in there.
Shall not be a disqualification for becoming a board member, nor shall request for disclosure, blah, blah, blah. Yep.
Okay. So Jim, to catch you up on what we did, the first thing we did, since it was not a voting thing, was we got an update on a lot of the policies where we've said appendices will be applied, or we'll be attaching appendices. So we went through a bunch of the policies about where we've mentioned appendices. I'll be happy to catch you up on the status of all of those policies if you want, after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And then, since the 529, the McKinney-Vento has to be voted on basically very soon, as soon as we can, we didn't want to go through the policy 529 without you being here.
Thank you.
So we blipped over that, and we were briefly discussing the campaign finance disclosure that Karen attempted to draft at. So,
Thank you. Apologize for being late. Physical
No.
therapy.
absolutely. I just,
Anyway.
we didn't want to exclude you from the pre-voting conversation. Yes?
Okay.
And then bullying.
Right, well, and then the bullying policy was included in our packets so that we could read it. It will be in front of us next
Next time.
time. But it's 11 pages, so I think Karen and Superintendent Murphy wanted us to have it so that we could get through the 11 pages,
Just 11.
and-
Why
and-
did I say 60?
chew on it a little bit before we get to the meeting.
That will be in our folders.
Yes, it is in our
is.
folders.
I think it's in
In
there
fact,
now.
I think I've got an extra copy. No, I don't.
That's okay. I
Yeah,
can
it's
get
in
it.
your folder, Dave.
Yep.
So, okay. So, once you've caught up with us, Jim, if you'll signal me, and then we can maybe turn to the McKinney-Vento.
Should we acknowledge to the public that he's here?
Oh,
You
well,
can.
we can. Jim actually arrived at 6:05, and so we now have a quorum. Thank you, Dave. And so now we can sort of move to having a discussion about things that we're gonna hopefully vote on.
I'm good.
Okay,
You can catch me up on some of the other items, the appendices of,
yeah,
I know what you're talking about and we're fine on that. And if you want to jump into policy 529, let's do it.
Okay. I have previously provided members the current number 529. It's entitled Homeless Students. And then I've given you a copy of the proposed 529, which includes a name change to Education of Homeless Children and Unaccompanied Youth. This is a priority required by law policy. It was worked on by the New Hampshire School Board Association, last revised in June of 2020. Concord School District last looked at our policy in February of 2019. And so what I did is I went through the old policy. I then looked at the new policy. I pulled the statute to take a look at exactly what it says, and then I started to make some modifications to our policy, and then I shared it with Janine Richards, who's our Director of Student Wellness, and Stacy Lazaro, who is our district homeless liaison to make sure that I had, not just the wording from New Hampshire School Board Association, but what we actually do in practice. Okay? So what I'd like to do is just go through, I can identify the changes from what was in the old policy to what we're looking at in the new one. The biggest, well, let's start right at the top. The intent is to remove barriers to identification, enrollment, and retention in schools of homeless children and youth. Okay? We want to make sure that our homeless kids have the same opportunities and access as our kids who are not homeless. And that includes career and technical education programs, gifted education programs, special education services. And then the line that says all staff shall take reasonable steps to ensure homeless children and youth are not segregated or stigmatized. That is from the New Hampshire School Board Association recommended policy. I added, based on the statute, the line that is underlined, that they have equal access to free, appropriate public education, including public preschool education, as provided other children and youth, and educational decisions are made in the best interest of those students. And that was right up front of McKinney-Vento, so I thought it properly belonged there. Then what I did in concert with what we've done in other policies is there are certain definitions in McKinney-Vento that are used throughout this policy. So I went ahead and added a definition section of the most relevant terms so that the reader will understand. And they are terms that are consistent between McKinney-Vento, New Hampshire Department of Education, and then again what we use in this policy. So we started out, I started out defining homeless children and youth. And I'd like to, right now, as I was reviewing this afternoon again, I'm going to make a recommendation. We make that homeless children, youth, and unaccompanied youth. And that'll be, the definition will be laid out to you in a few minutes, but there is a difference. New Hampshire School Board Association just says homeless students. And we do use homeless students, so I don't want to unnecessarily complicate this. If you'd rather, we just stick with homeless students. But basically, homeless children and youth and unaccompanied youth are, and that is the same, the 7 criteria that are listed there are the same that were in the former policy. The big difference is that in 2015, the requirement, or the criteria that you could add students who were awaiting foster care placement, that has been eliminated. They can still, foster children can still, or kids in foster care can still qualify if they meet other criteria within the statute, but solely awaiting foster care placement has been removed. Okay?
Okay.
So, homeless children and youth, or homeless students. I then went on to unaccompanied youth and defined that, as you can see. And then the following definitions: school of origin, duration of homelessness, and homeless liaison were all used throughout the policy. So I went ahead and used the homeless liaison duties were laid out in the New Hampshire School Board Association amended, their latest policy. But everything else, as far as the definition section, I pulled right from the statute. Okay. On the enrollment and school stability, I apologize if the paragraph is okay, except for mine is indented far to the right. Bridget was working on that. Is yours indented far in as well, too?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's please know we're going to take care of that. There's some formatting.
That's a format issue.
Yeah, format issue, and there will be, like in number 15, where it says state and federal agencies, I'll lowercase state and federal. So just some cleanup on the administrative side. Under enrollment and school stability, one of the things you will see in the New Hampshire School Board Association go by is it talks about enrollment of a student be immediate. When you look at that, I'm like, well, what does that mean? The preferred term, and everybody was in agreement with this, was without delay. In other words, you can't wait. You got to get the student enrolled as soon as possible.
There was a time when they would ask for things like immunization records and birth certificate and, their physicals and medical, and, those could one, they probably don't even have them, and so rather than any chance that that would delay kids getting back into school, they've really eliminated that, which is good.
Yep, so we don't hold off, and in fact, there's language in that enrollment and school stability that actually directs us, when we can, when feasible, seek the immunizations, help them, get them through no or low-cost health care providers, and then seek reimbursement through Medicaid. Okay. Moving on to enrollment determinations for homeless students. It should be based on the best interest of the homeless students. And there's also the presumption of trying to keep the homeless student in the school of origin if it's in the student's best interest, unless it's contrary to the request of the student, of the parent or guardian or unaccompanied youth. Okay. And then I added consideration of some factors that were laid out in the McKinney-Vento language that said some of the factors would be impact on mobility, on achievement, education, health, and safety, just to give it a little bit more definition of exactly what we're talking about. Moving on to transportation of homeless students. Again, once enrolled, this should be done without delay. Then lays out who has the responsibility for paying. If they're coming, basically if there are two districts involved, then they have to agree, both districts need to get together, agree on a method to apportion the cost. However the responsibility is divided, again, the last sentence I added, it has to be provided, the student has to be provided transportation without delay, same as enrollment, so.
If there were challenges, that would be one of them. When you get you get notice of a youngster that needs transportation, and then given the situation we're in right now with buses and drivers, it's a challenge. But we've been using third party to help us with that. If it's a car service or something like that, so that we can get the youngsters in. We also have very good luck in sharing the costs with any district that we are working with. It's usually a 50-50 split between the two districts, so that works out.
Right. And I neglected to tell you that currently we have 94 kids or students who qualify for homeless children, unaccompanied youth in the district, and I was told today that that's probably very low in reality.
In other words, there are students out there that are not coming to school as well.
Or
Not
have not.
identified as homeless.
Right.
Or
Right. So-
Right.
And then moving on to dispute resolution, the protocols are laid out there. As Kathleen just noted, that transportation can be one of the areas of dispute. The other one is the school of origin, where they're going to go. And so what these paragraphs do is they lay out the process of how you can appeal. And again, even if there's an issue of contention, the student goes to the school of choice, okay, and attends school, quote, without delay, and has transportation provided without delay while we work out the criteria. And then if there is an issue, we have to notify them of what the appeal process is, help them. And those are the three forms that I alluded to earlier, Jim, before you got here. We actually are going to have some appendices to this policy. And Appendix 1 would come in after notification of appeal process under A. And that is the school, this is where the person coming in, the parent, the guardian, or the unaccompanied minor submits their appeal. That would be the form that they would use, so they know exactly what is there. The second appendix would come in under 1D, and that is the decision, the written notification of decision, and it shows exactly what is required. And then third, we are required to also give them the process that's required through the state of New Hampshire, so that's going to be appendix number 3. So again, levels under 1, 2, and 3 are just the appeal processes. These are new. They were not laid out in the previous policy. They are laid out by the New Hampshire School Board Association, so basically I just made sure that we were consistent with parent, guardian, the use of the language unaccompanied youth, or, just making sure homeless children, making sure we were consistent in the language.
I assume, Kathleen, maybe you can explain this to me, that these kids may want to be they may live someplace in Concord's perimeter, but their family or their guardians or whoever their family was living someplace else there in another school. They come into, is that what this would be referencing, if you were appealing the process? I'm not.
Well, unaccompanied, what you just described might be unaccompanied youth who are they're not with their parents, they don't have, they're not physically with them. Because you have homeless
Right.
children and youth, which normally are under 18 with parents. Then you have your unaccompanied youth,
Right.
who could be under 18, not in the possession of, not living physically with their parents.
We've had some children who are under 18 who have ended up in Concord, and their parent does not live in Concord. They live in another state. They're now living with a relative. They're considered homeless.
Why would someone appeal? I mean,
When we would deny them homeless status, if we said, you have permanent housing,
okay.
you were able, from the beginning. Now, if you got permanent housing mid-year, we have to complete the year as quote unquote a homeless student, so they have all the benefits of being a homeless student, even though they have permanent housing. But I think it would be if we denied them. In my experience, that's not been an occasion that happens. And we often will reach out to the Department of Ed and the homeless coordinator at the department, and they've been very good about providing any guidance we might need. It's not been an issue where we've had any concerns, but we have to pay attention. If somebody lives in another community and all of a sudden they want their youngster to go to school in Concord because they may have more opportunity in Concord for education, so we do have to watch that.
Okay.
And the other one is the transportation. Janine was
Right.
saying that today, that it's expensive, but we need to get on it right away.
Right, I get that.
Well, you'll hear from Jack when we get into budget, and he will tell you that, we put money aside in Title I and in our homeless grants for transportation, but honestly, Dave, it doesn't cover it because, we have youngsters that are coming over from the seacoast, because this was their school of origin, and so
Right.
it's
I
expensive,
understand. It is
right?
very expensive.
So you'll hear from Jack, and he'll talk to you about how transportation can be an area of a deficit for us, as it is for a lot of school districts.
Right.
And even worse now because of your gas prices and
Right,
so,
et cetera, et cetera.
et cetera, right.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes. And then the final part is just, the obligation to retain copies of any written decisions, appeals,
Right,
notifications for the same time period as we do for Title I records. So.
Yep.
Dave, do you have any more questions?
Nope.
Jim, any questions?
No, thank you very much, Karen.
So can I correctly infer that you would like us to recommend this to the board for reading, since we kind of need to have this in post haste?
That would be my recommendation to the,
Right, and as you know, that as our grants come through, those are the things that the auditor, when Ellen was doing when they did, the auditor came over from the department, that was one of the policies that they were looking for too, and the
Right, was this
upgrades to
one.
the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we need to make this not a first and second reading, but just a final reading because of timing?
And also, honestly, you've had a policy, so you're really just making some amendments, so it's not like it's a brand-new policy for the board to kind of, ascertain all the elements of it.
Yeah, but we would, per normal procedure, have two readings.
Correct.
and I guess I'm asking straight out, is the timing is such that we need to not only recommend this to the board, but do it in a manner that is just one reading so that we can get this passed by the October meeting, or does this carry through, can we carry this through to passing it on the November meeting?
For what it's worth, I seem to recall that we were issued a deficiency that we did not have this updated policy. We've already been issued that.
So it sounds like
So
we need to,
that is my take, but I could be wrong. I'm looking to.
Well, yeah, when they came in to do the audit, they said that policy was missing.
this is the DOE looking for,
McKinney,
This
I
policy.
thought that was the drug and alcohol with the grant issue where we needed to add the language
I
about,
thought this one came up too.
No, it was
Was it?
definitely this one.
I
okay.
think there were a couple. One was the drug and alcohol, and this one. And both of them, we had them in place, we
We
hadn't
just didn't have the
Updated.
updated one.
updates.
Okay.
so,
My
in that,
recommendation.
in that case, I'd like to make a motion that this committee recommend policy number 529 to the board at the earliest possible meeting for just a single reading and passage.
I'll second it.
And this feels so bizarre because it's just the three of us, but all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Ms. Cannon, may I request that as we send out the board packets, that the administration make it clear as to our reasons for asking for this to be passed on that night, so that everybody's kind of prepped, just to give them a heads up,
We could.
or weekend,
Or weekend, yeah.
however,
I can send out an email to everybody.
however you wish to handle it.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Karen, for your work on this.
Yes.
For sure. I'm curious, off topic probably, but how many policies have we reviewed?
We're in the 40s, just in the last 2 years. Well, last year. Yep. I have a
Are
whole.
we gonna have 40s? We're gonna be in the
No.
40s
Every year?
next time around?
No,
but
we,
Here it is. That's the list right now. And they're not all, I haven't updated in the last 2 sessions, so you've done great work.
Holy policies, Batman.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's nice. So, and just so you know, Title IX, there's a, Gina, you probably know, Title IX, sexual harassment, our grievance policies and procedures, in the Department of Education has sent out recommended revisions for public comment, so I would expect sometime this winter we'll probably get it. Good news is I've seen a lot of the upcoming recommendations. We're solid on a lot of them. The good news is it's going to really hopefully provide guidance for K through 12 on the transgender, gender identity, LGBTQ, more clarification there. So when I looked at the proposed changes, and I sat in on a webinar this summer, none of them made my, they were all seemed very reasonable.
So perhaps this coming year will be less of a lift for
I
this
think
Correct.
so.
particular
I think so.
committee. So.
But we have some cleanup to
Wishful
do.
thinking.
We
Yeah,
do.
no, there's always
Yeah.
some tweaking and some
We do.
aligning and so a little bit of revision, depending on what the
So
legislature
we
does.
had a
right?
few things on the list here under the agenda and upcoming topics, but we'll probably be adding some more because we have things like, I made some notes, that we have the policy around public comment needs to be fixed on your policy.
Yep.
We want to talk a little bit about citizen standing, promotion and retention criteria, early acceptance. That was a policy that we wanted to deal with. We're working on that. We now have a responsibility for a civics exam as a requirement for graduation. So we still have things that are coming at us, but hey, that's the nature of the work.
I'm sorry?
What do they have to, what's the grade they need to?
70%.
Yeah,
Yep.
70%, and they gave me a copy of the the exam that you take to get your citizenship.
Yep.
You can use that, or you can develop one of your own. So
We should give
we're
it-
on
we
that. We're on that right now.
I'd be very interested in reading
You
that.
should see the
Oh, you should,
exam.
You can
you
get
should,
it.
you can Google it online, and it's got, I think, 3 or 4 sections, primary
Yep.
sections
Yep.
about like history
Right.
and structure and that kind of stuff, and it's,
Yeah.
And when will that, we need to comply with that?
June 2023 is when it becomes a
This year?
requirement.
Well,
This June.
no, but I
this
don't
year's
think.
class doesn't have to do
Yeah,
it.
the
The next class
2023,
does.
I do not believe does, but the class of
Junior does.
2024.
Yeah.
Actually, I wrote, it says effective for students graduating, 2024, and then I went and looked and I had June of 2023, so that would mean they'd have already graduated, so it would be your class of 24,
Yeah.
Isn't it 2022 now? They would-
Yeah.
oh,
but it'll be 23.
But this is the current seniors are class of 23.
Right.
So yeah, next year.
Well, no, okay.
Well, I guess it depends on when it goes into effect. Like, if it goes in June 1st, then we don't graduate until the 14th, then is it us? Or if it goes in on June 30th and we graduate on the 14th, it isn't us.
Yeah,
I think it's next school year practically.
I
don't
hope.
think they're gonna do much more than that.
I have it for a note. I want to say June 23rd, but don't hold
Okay,
me
so
to
we
it.
need to have
A poll. But no,
I
they
just looked
graduate
at
like
when
on the
graduation
16th.
was.
Right, so I just, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
When goes into effect.
I'm pretty sure it's the end of June.
okay. Is there any other business before the committee this evening? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
And I will second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned.
Nice job, Gina.